Hitler's bathtub. That's the only spoiler I'll give, but really, Hitler's bathtub.
There are different kinds of wounds. Not just the ones you can see.
If you thought a movie about an aging war photographer would be a slow burner, yes, yeah. Kate Winslet stars as Lee Miller, a former fashion model who isn't shy about stripping down for just any occasion, like sitting out in the sun, while making art, or while sitting in Adolf Hitler's bathtub. Anyway, when the war breaks out, all of her friends are off in Paris joining the revolution, the resistance, and she's stuck at home while her husband makes camouflage for British tanks, I think, something like that. And she's feeling like she's just become this housewife and she's got no role. So she goes to Vogue, gets a job as a photographer, does some work around London, and then through various exciting scenes about diplomacy, she sneaks her way off to France to get a little bit of a holiday with Nazis. This film is excellently done. I'm not generally a big fan of the biopic genre, just because I feel like you can't actually condense someone's life into a 2-hour film. So you're just kind of bopping along between random parts and you don't get the full picture. But this isn't that, because it is so focused during her time in World War II that it's quite condensed and it's much more manageable. And while there are elements that felt like they were a bit slow, plotted along a bit, it worked pretty well. And I gotta say, it did feel at times like the filmmakers just wanted to shove in as many scenes that exactly matched certain photographs she took during the war as possible. Some of them didn't really need their own scene necessarily, but it's fine. Kate Winslet is fantastic, no surprise there. She is a great lead, and I was worried she was going to be playing a real, like, grouchy, old-fashioned, what do you mean, they're just photographs kind of character, and she does, but only in the framing story set when she's older. During the actual main part of the story, she's much more lively, much more of an actual character you want to follow. Even if she's quite a prickly person in general, she's not really nice. Well-behaved women seldom change history. This is that kind of vibe, Andy Samberg is also fantastic, and that's more of a surprise just to see him in such a dramatic role and to nail it so heavily. And it is a heavy role because he's a Jewish actor playing a Jewish character, and these two were two of the first photographers to take photos of what happened from the Holocaust, the kind of aftermath of some of the very worst parts of it. So that is an incredibly emotional role for him to have played, and he really nailed it. It was mostly about Kate Winslet's character, but he was just quietly crushing that role in the background. The film, as with most biopics, doesn't feel focused. There's no crescendo that it's building to, because seldom is the most interesting thing that happens in someone's life at the end of their life. You know what I mean? That's another problem I have with the genre in general. It doesn't feel like it gets to build like a traditional film can, and it doesn't feel like it's got any big ending. It just kind of plods along and then stops somewhere. I feel like this is one of those rare films that perfectly meets my expectations. This was exactly what I expected it to be in so many ways. It's got some interesting stories from her perspective of the war. It's got some sad Holocaust stuff going on, really heavy moments and scenes. And it's just interesting. It's just interesting throughout. It wasn't too slow, which I thought it might be. I thought it might just be a vehicle for a great performance by Kate Winslet. Kind of was, but everyone else was doing their job well enough that it is just interesting without sheerly being focused on that. Kate Winslet and Andy Samberg should not be an amazing combo, but it really is. They are great together. I love them on screen. I thought their characters were just perfect. There are some really interesting little tidbits and stories. It's not a fantastic film. It's not a masterpiece, but it is just well enough worth telling, which I often at the end of a film, especially all these like musical biopics and stuff we've seen in the past few years, I'm really exhausted of the genre. So I was expecting to kind of be like, this doesn't really justify its own existence, but it does. And I'm, as not a big fan of the genre anymore, I can say, wow, yeah, hey, worth watching. I found it to be a really interesting character study that had enough going on outside of the big powerhouse leading performance that it didn't feel slow. And I think a lot of that is down to the World War II setting, but yeah, fair enough, you take what you got. Everyone else just did their job here. I think it's worth checking out, even if not in the cinema. And I'm giving Invading Hitler's Most Personal Space 3.5 stars. I don't know if getting into his bathtub would be my first idea, but just in generally invading Hitler's personal space and fucking around with his stuff, yeah, of course. Hey, what did Hitler say when he realized he'd lost the war? I did not see that coming.